The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has seen huge losses in both human lives and military hardware. The world is calling for an agreement to end the armed conflict between the two countries, but it seems to have no effect. Many soldiers on both sides have died in this unjust war, and the amount of weapons destroyed is astonishing. Between Russia and Ukraine, which side do you think will run out of resources first in this war? Recent satellite imagery reveals a shocking truth. Russia's massive tank reserves are disappearing at an unprecedented rate. Observations indicate a severe Russian tank shortage that threatens to reshape the current military landscape. Analysis shows that what was once considered an almost inexhaustible arsenal has now become a critical vulnerability. The declining Russian tank numbers present a concerning picture of Russia's military readiness. A careful examination of Russian tank inventory data reveals significant depletion in storage facilities across the country. This dramatic reduction in Russia's tank stockpile raises serious questions about its ability to sustain long-term military operations and maintain its position as a global military power. Russia's weapons storage infrastructure presents a highly intricate network of facilities that is now facing extraordinary challenges. An extensive analysis of this system highlights a combination of widespread resource depletion and structural vulnerabilities. The country operates 10 central tank reserve bases, at least 37 mixed equipment storage bases, and 12 artillery storage bases spread across its vast territory. However, this once extensive network has become increasingly strained under the pressures of modern conflict and systemic inefficiencies. Recent satellite imagery has provided critical insights into the state of these storage facilities, revealing alarming levels of damage at several key sites. The destruction observed at facilities such as Toropets and Oktyabrski, located west of Moscow, underscores the severity of the current situation. The Toropets facility, in particular, has suffered catastrophic losses, with approximately 30,000 tons of ammunition destroyed in a single incident. Thermal data captured by NASA satellites further confirms the widespread nature of this damage, pointing to an escalating crisis in Russia's capacity to safeguard its military stockpiles. Statistical analyses of equipment inventories paint a grim picture of attrition and insufficient replenishment. Russia is currently experiencing monthly losses of around 100 tanks, 220 artillery pieces, and approximately 155 infantry fighting vehicles. Despite these heavy losses, the nation's production capabilities are woefully inadequate to meet the demand. Manufacturing facilities can produce only 17 new vehicles per month, with an annual capacity limited to just 30 new tanks. These figures reveal the immense strain on Russia's defense production infrastructure, highlighting a growing gap between equipment losses and replacement rates. The geographic distribution of storage facilities across Russia reflects a strategic positioning that spans its western, central, and eastern regions. Key storage sites are situated near major hubs, such as Murmansk and Moscow in the west, Vormozh and Saratov in the center, and Siberia and the Far East in the east. However, the number of operational facilities has declined drastically over the past 3 decades, from over 500 before 1991 to fewer than 100 today. This sharp reduction reflects not only strategic restructuring but also the depletion of resources. The remaining facilities are increasingly reliant on cannibalization, stripping parts from existing equipment to maintain a semblance of operational functionality. At the current pace of attrition, projections indicate that Russia's ability to refurbish tanks and infantry vehicles from storage will be critically compromised by late 2025. This timeline corresponds with intelligence assessments suggesting a significant erosion of Russia's offensive capabilities by mid-2025. The challenges extend beyond inventory management to the manufacturing sector, where production bottlenecks exacerbate the crisis. Russia currently operates only 2 rotary forges capable of producing tank and artillery barrels, each limited to an annual output of approximately 100 barrels. This severe constraint on specialized manufacturing capacity further hampers efforts to replace lost equipment, underscoring the precarious state of Russia's military readiness. In summary, the confluence of structural damage, resource depletion, and production limitations suggests that Russia's weapons storage and manufacturing systems are nearing a critical threshold. Without significant changes in strategy or capacity, the sustainability of its military operations faces an increasingly uncertain future. Russia's military operations have changed as growing equipment shortages affect their battlefield performance. The current analysis indicates that Russian forces, now numbering approximately 470,000 troops, are encountering unprecedented challenges in sustaining their offensive capabilities. These difficulties are shaping both their operational capacity and combat effectiveness. Russia's operational capacity has been substantially constrained by the depletion of essential equipment. Analysis of documented losses reveals that Russia has lost over 8,000 tanks since the conflict began, a staggering number that has forced the military to rely heavily on aging Soviet-era hardware. It is estimated that around 85% of the tanks currently deployed to the front lines consist of older TC-62 and T-55 models, significantly limiting their ability to match the performance of modern military systems. The increasing strain on resources has resulted in critical operational limitations that undermine the military's ability to maintain offensive momentum. These constraints include a diminished capacity to sustain large-scale offensives and a reduced ability to conduct deep penetration operations. Aging equipment has further restricted the mobility of Russian forces while increasing their vulnerability to modern anti-tank systems employed by opposing forces. In response to these challenges, the Russian military has made significant tactical adjustments. The evolving battlefield conditions have compelled Russian forces to reorganize into smaller, more flexible formations. They now operate with line and storm battalions, which function as specialized units for frontline assaults, as well as dispersed company-sized groups designed for maneuverability. To mitigate losses, units are regularly rotated out of active operations once they sustain approximately 30% of casualties. These structural changes align with a broader shift to an active defense strategy, which prioritizes holding forward positions while executing aggressive counteracts to disrupt opposing forces. Though resource-intensive, this approach allows Russia to maintain pressure on multiple points across the front lines simultaneously, albeit at considerable cost. An in-depth analysis of combat effectiveness has revealed troubling trends for Russian forces. Despite retaining a numerical advantage in artillery, the overall quality of weaponry has deteriorated over time. Similarly, the Russian Air Force, traditionally a critical pillar of their military strategy, has consistently underperformed. This decline in Air Force effectiveness stems both from doctrinal limitations and from extensive equipment losses, which have proven increasingly difficult to replace. Several factors have further compromised the quality and performance of Russian forces. Chief among these challenges is the shortage of adequately trained officers. Reports indicate that some officers receive no more than 2 months of condensed training before being deployed, significantly undermining their capacity to lead complex operations. Russia has also demonstrated a continued inability to scale offensive operations to deliver decisive outcomes, struggling to translate numerical and material advantages into meaningful gains on the battlefield. Complicating matters further is Russia's growing reliance on foreign partners to compensate for military supply shortages. Analysis confirms that support from North Korea has enabled Russia to maintain its artillery advantage. However, this dependency raises concerns about the sustainability of such partnerships in the long term. Without sufficient domestic production or diversified foreign supply chains, Russia's ability to replenish its equipment and sustain ongoing operations remains in question. Looking ahead, projections suggest that Russia will face increasingly severe challenges in maintaining its current operational tempo. The strain on resources and equipment, coupled with the impact of Western sanctions, is likely to accelerate the degradation of their military capabilities. Analysts estimate that Russia may only be able to sustain operations at the present level for another 2 to 3 years. Without substantial success in circumventing sanctions or significantly expanding foreign partnerships for military material, Russian forces will face a marked decline in their ability to sustain combat effectiveness on the battlefield. Russia's military equipment reveals an increasing reliance on Soviet-era hardware as modern replacements become scarce. Approximately 85% of tanks currently deployed to the front lines are refurbished Soviet-era models. We've identified a significant shift in Russia's equipment deployment patterns, with forces now utilizing T-72, T-62, and even T-55 tanks from the 1950s. Approximately 7,500 pieces of towed artillery, primarily Soviet-era pieces. Over 3,000 rocket launchers of various Soviet designs. The Russian military maintains roughly 5,750 main battle tanks, and between 9,000 to 10,000 other armored platforms. Our analysis shows that before the current conflict, the T-90 baseline had a 1-to-3 ratio of new production to modernization. The investigation has uncovered significant technical obstacles hindering Russia's efforts to restore and redeploy its military equipment, particularly tanks, to operational status. Contrary to claims presented in official manuals, which emphasize the efficiency and reliability of repair processes, the actual repairability of these tanks is markedly lower, estimated to be 3 to 5 times worse than officially stated. This disparity underscores the immense challenges faced by Russian forces as they attempt to reconstitute their armored capabilities amidst ongoing battlefield losses. The process of preparing tanks from mothballed reserves for combat has proven to be exceptionally time-consuming and labor-intensive. Reports indicate that refurbishing these vehicles requires up to 10 days of concentrated, intensive effort for each unit before they can be deemed combat-ready. This extended timeline highlights the systemic issues within Russia's maintenance and logistical systems, which have been further exacerbated by the condition of vehicles emerging from long-term storage. Among the most critical challenges identified is the incomplete state of many tanks arriving from storage bases. These vehicles are often missing essential components, such as functional engines, weapon systems, or critical electronics, rendering them unusable without significant repairs or replacements. The irregular and inconsistent state of stored equipment has made it exceedingly difficult for repair crews to efficiently restore a reliable fleet. Further complicating the restoration process is the presence of multiple engine types across Russia's aging tank inventory. The lack of standardization has introduced additional delays, as repair facilities must contend with incompatible parts, specialized tooling, and varying maintenance protocols for different tank models. This complexity has severely strained repair capabilities, leading to prolonged downtimes and inefficiencies in the restoration process. Another major obstacle lies in the critical lack of unified weapon systems across Russia's tank reserves. The use of disparate armaments and fire control systems among older models necessitates more extensive adjustments and retrofits, further slowing restoration efforts. Without standardized weapon systems, repair crews are forced to improvise, increasing the risk of malfunctions or diminished battlefield performance once the tanks are redeployed. Moreover, malfunctioning communication and fire control systems have emerged as another significant barrier to combat readiness. Many tanks retrieved from mothballed reserves are equipped with outdated or defective systems that fail to meet the demands of modern warfare. The inability to restore these critical systems compromises the tank's operational effectiveness, rendering them vulnerable on the battlefield and limiting their capacity to coordinate effectively with other units during combat operations. Collectively, these technical challenges paint a concerning picture of Russia's equipment restoration capabilities. While the country has sought to leverage its stockpiles of mothballed tanks to offset frontline losses, the realities of the repair process reveal deep-rooted inefficiencies and systemic flaws. The time, effort, and resources required to prepare these aging vehicles for combat not only strain the Russian military's logistical infrastructure but also raise serious questions about the long-term sustainability of its armored forces in the context of protracted conflict. Soviet-era equipment demonstrates mixed performance in modern combat scenarios. The Russian defense industry continues producing artillery rounds at approximately 3 times the rate of the United States and Europe combined. Current forecasts indicate a production capability of 4.5 million shells annually. Our assessment shows that while these legacy systems remain operational, their effectiveness is compromised by several factors. The thermal imaging channel of the Sosoyu tactical site requires up to 11 minutes to enter operational mode, creating significant vulnerabilities in fast-paced combat situations. Russian forces rarely employ armor in concentrated assaults, instead occupying dispersed positions and relying increasingly on artillery support. This tactical adjustment reflects both the limitations of aging equipment and adaptation to modern battlefield conditions. An extensive analysis of Russia's military manufacturing capabilities has revealed significant challenges in sustaining production levels necessary to support its ongoing military operations. The findings underscore a critical imbalance between Russia's ambitions and the limitations of its defense industry, which faces mounting structural and logistical obstacles. According to U.S. officials, Russia is currently undertaking what has been described as the most ambitious expansion in military manufacturing since the Soviet era. However, the realities of production capacity, workforce shortages, and the impact of sanctions paint a far less optimistic picture of Russia's long-term industrial resilience. The current state of Russia's manufacturing output falls markedly short of meeting the military's growing demands. Research indicates that the defense industry is grappling with an acute workforce shortage, with a deficit of approximately 400,000 engineers and workers out of an overall workforce of 2 million. This shortfall is particularly evident even among Russia's largest and most prominent military manufacturers, such as Uralvagonzavod and Kurgamashadod, where efforts to implement 3-shift production schedules have proven largely unsuccessful. Despite offering increased salaries, bonuses, and other benefits to attract and retain skilled labor, these major facilities struggle to overcome the loss of qualified personnel, which has severely hampered their ability to meet production targets. The challenges faced by Russia's defense industry extend well beyond workforce issues. and into the realm of production infrastructure. A key limitation lies in tank repair and production facilities where inexperienced personnel are increasingly tasked with complex and technical work that requires expertise and precision. Compounding the problem is the scarcity of essential production equipment. Russia's ability to manufacture tank barrels, for instance, is limited by its dependence on just 2 rotary forges capable of producing these components. The production capacity of these facilities is constrained to a maximum of 100 barrels annually per site, a figure far below the levels required to support ongoing battlefield operations and replenish mounting losses. Western sanctions have further exacerbated Russia's manufacturing challenges, imposing critical restrictions on its access to high-end foreign components essential for advanced weapons production. The investigation has found that sanctions have created shortages of key components, including engines, turbines, and microelectronics, which are vital for the production and operation of modern military systems. While Moscow has pursued state-backed import substitution programs to mitigate the impact, these efforts have yielded limited success. Substituting imported components with domestically produced or lower-quality alternatives has undermined the performance, reliability, and sophistication of Russia's military equipment. Additionally, the sanctions regime has disrupted supply chains across the defense sector, forcing Russia to rely heavily on alternative sources of imports from non-sanctioning countries such as China, Iran, North Korea, Turkey, and Kazakhstan. Although these workarounds have provided some temporary relief, they have introduced new challenges that continue to strain the military-industrial complex. The reliance on foreign partners from these nations has resulted in additional costs, longer delays, and inconsistent delivery of essential components. The quality of materials procured through these alternative supply chains often fails to meet the standards necessary for high-performance military equipment, creating further inefficiencies in the production process. The strain on Russia's military manufacturing sector has led experts to describe the situation as military industry overheating. This term refers to an unsustainable production model, wherein the costs of maintaining and expanding military output consume an increasingly disproportionate share of the country's economic resources. The defense industry's reliance on imported machine tools and components for arms production further complicates its ability to function independently, leaving Russia vulnerable to fluctuations in supply and geopolitical shifts among its international partners. The overall assessment of Russia's military manufacturing capabilities suggests that while the industry has demonstrated a degree of resilience, it remains mired in a precarious balancing act. The Russian defense sector must simultaneously manage existing military stockpiles, modernize aging platforms, and increase production across multiple sectors to sustain ongoing operations. This complex juggling of priorities, exacerbated by structural inefficiencies and external sanctions, has created a situation where short-term production gains are achieved at the expense of long-term sustainability. Despite Russia's efforts to adapt to these immense challenges, the current trajectory raises serious concerns about the future viability of its military manufacturing capabilities. The combination of workforce deficits, production bottlenecks, sanctions-induced shortages, and reliance on alternative supply chains has placed the industry under immense pressure. While Moscow has managed to maintain some level of production through these adaptive strategies, the underlying vulnerability suggests that this approach is ultimately unsustainable and threatens to erode Russia's ability to sustain its military forces in a prolonged conflict. Through our extensive investigation into Russia's international supply networks, we've uncovered a complex web of military partnerships helping to address the Russian tank shortage. Our findings reveal an unprecedented scale of cooperation with both North Korea and Iran, alongside a growing black market presence. We've documented substantial military aid from North Korea to Russia, with deliveries reaching 5 million artillery shells since September 2023. This figure is particularly significant when compared to Russia's annual production capacity of only 2 to 3 million shells. Our analysis shows that North Korea and Russia have formalized their relationship through a strategic partnership treaty that includes mutual military support. Key military supplies from North Korea include N-23-24 ballistic missiles, artillery shells and ammunition, combat personnel support. We've tracked Iran's expanding military assistance to Russia, which has evolved significantly. Our investigation reveals that Iran has supplied Russia with more than 2,000 Shahed 136-131 kamikaze drones, 18 Mohajer 6 drones, hundreds of ballistic missiles delivered in 2024. What's particularly noteworthy is that Russia has deployed more than 8,060 Iranian-designed drones since the conflict began. We've confirmed that many of these drones are now manufactured in Russia's Tatarstan region using Iranian technology and components. The monitoring of illegal arms flows has uncovered the existence of a sophisticated and far-reaching black market network that is facilitating the proliferation of Russian weapons beyond the conflict zone. Evidence gathered through extensive investigations indicates that arms originating from Russia's ongoing military operations are increasingly appearing on European black markets. Among the most prevalent weapons identified are Alaska 74Ms, a model produced in the 1990s, which have become a notable presence in illicit arms trade circles. Analysis of pricing structures within these markets reveals that these firearms are commanding substantial sums, with individual units being sold for approximately €1,500. A deeper investigation into the mechanisms of this illicit trade has revealed that combat weapons are readily available for purchase through encrypted messaging platforms on the dark web. The accessibility of such high-powered weaponry highlights both the sophistication and operational agility of the networks facilitating these transactions. Smuggling routes have been identified as playing a crucial role in enabling the movement of arms, particularly through Moldova and the Balkans, regions historically known for their porous borders and entrenched smuggling infrastructure. These pathways have proven instrumental in distributing Russian military equipment into broader international black markets. The growing presence of Russian weapons and military equipment in global black market networks has become increasingly apparent. The scale of this trade raises significant concerns about international security, particularly as these weapons find their way into the hands of organized criminal groups and other non-state actors. This proliferation has had profound geopolitical implications, underscoring the intersection of illegal arms trade and ongoing conflicts. Russia's role within the global arms trafficking landscape is especially troubling when analyzed in the context of the Global Organized Crime Index. Findings from this assessment indicate that Russia's position in arms trafficking ranks alarmingly close to Ukraine's, with a margin of just 0.5%. This places Russia's black market for arms on par with countries such as Chad, Mexico, and Pakistan, regions long recognized for their challenges in combating the illicit arms trade. Such a ranking highlights the extent to which Russia's weapons are not only fueling local conflicts, but are also becoming part of broader, systemic patterns of organized crime on a global scale. Further analysis reveals that Russia's increasing involvement in international arms networks reflects its growing reliance on foreign partners to sustain its military capabilities. The nature of these partnerships has evolved considerably in recent years, shifting from purely transactional relationships to more entrenched and strategic alliances. This trend is particularly evident in the formal agreements signed between Russia, North Korea, and Iran. These agreements suggest a deeper level of cooperation, wherein military and logistical support is exchanged as part of broader geopolitical alignments. The sophistication and reach of these international supply networks not only enable Russia to secure critical resources for its military operations, but also contribute to the destabilization of other regions through the proliferation of weapons. The presence of Russian arms on illicit markets, coupled with the strategic alliances emerging between Russia and its foreign partners, underscores a troubling dynamic that has far-reaching implications for global security and stability. The persistence of this trend signals a growing challenge for international authorities tasked with combating arms trafficking and mitigating its impact on regional and global conflicts. Our analysis of Russia's economic situation reveals that the mounting costs of maintaining military operations are creating unprecedented strains on the nation's financial stability. We've observed that defense spending has reached a historic 6% of GDP, marking the first time in modern Russian history that military expenditure has exceeded social spending. Russia's defense spending is set to exert unprecedented pressure on the country's fiscal stability, with projections indicating that more than 41% of the state budget will be allocated to defense expenditures next year. This extraordinary level of spending highlights the severe strain on national finances. Investigations reveal that the National Wealth Fund, once a vital financial cushion, has been depleted by nearly half since the start of the invasion. To manage escalating economic instability and rising inflation, the Russian central bank has been forced to implement drastic measures, including raising interest rates to 21% in an attempt to stabilize the economy. These developments underscore the growing tension between Russia's military ambitions and the country's overall economic resilience. The strain is particularly evident in Russia's industrial sector, which is facing critical challenges linked to workforce shortages and logistical constraints. Research findings indicate a shortfall of approximately 160,000 workers across military factories, a problem that has been exacerbated by historically low unemployment rates. currently hovering at an unsustainable 2.4%. This deficit has left the defense industry struggling to meet increasing production demands. Compounding these difficulties are restricted access to Western technology and advanced machinery, which have been essential to Russian manufacturing processes. Sanctions have caused severe production delays, while rising manufacturing costs and the limited availability of skilled personnel have added further strain to an already burdened sector. The long-term economic consequences of Russia's defense-oriented policies are deeply concerning. Analyses point to significant, systemic challenges that are likely to persist well beyond the immediate conflict. In response to fiscal and economic pressures, the Russian government has resorted to extreme interventions, including export bans on essential goods and strict capital controls, measures designed to preserve financial stability but which further alienate the country from global markets. Russia's increasing economic isolation has aggravated these challenges, placing significant strain on trade and investment flows. The civilian economy has been hit particularly hard. Small and medium-sized enterprises, the backbone of many national economies, are experiencing significant contraction under the weight of wartime economic policies. High levels of defense spending have created upward pressure on wages, particularly in war-related industries, which has disrupted labor markets and amplified economic distortions. Meanwhile, the continued depreciation of the ruble has driven import prices higher, placing additional strain on businesses and households alike. One of the most concerning findings is that Russia's economic growth appears to be largely confined to war-related activities. The military-industrial sector has become the primary driver of economic output, masking deeper structural weaknesses within the economy. Accelerated workforce decline due to mass mobilization and migration has further eroded economic capacity, while scarce financial resources leave little room for productive investment. Severe restrictions on access to international technologies have stifled innovation, while the current economic environment provides few incentives for businesses to improve productivity or efficiency. The analysis suggests that Russia faces a difficult and unsustainable choice. If defense spending remains at current levels, it risks suffocating the civilian economy, exacerbating existing problems such as resource misallocation, inflation, and economic stagnation. On the other hand, a reduction in military expenditures could expose Russia to a severe and potentially destabilizing recession, further weakening its economic and strategic position. Projections indicate that, if current trends persist, Russia's ability to maintain its military capabilities, particularly its tank inventory and other critical equipment, will become increasingly unsustainable. Analysts estimate that the combined effects of fiscal strain, industrial bottlenecks, and economic isolation will likely push Russia to a critical breaking point by late 2025, when maintaining current production and operational levels may no longer be viable. This precarious balance highlights the broader vulnerabilities within Russia's economic and defense strategy, raising serious concerns about its long-term sustainability. We expect Russia's military capabilities to alter significantly in the coming years based on our extensive military intelligence study. Our research shows that Russia's military planning horizon is 2026, but numerous major concerns threaten it. Russia's equipment depletion timetable shows numerous key milestones that will affect its military capability in the next years. Analysis shows that by mid-2025, Russia would have expended most of its stored military material, putting unprecedented pressure on its operations. Current forecasts suggest that functional tanks and storage facilities will be emptied by late 2025, making the situation extremely serious for the tank force. Over the same era, artillery ammunition shortages will worsen and equipment will need extensive maintenance. Russia's long-term military preparedness will be weakened by 2026 when weapon and ammunition stocks run out. Russia has taken several strategic steps to rebuild its military to meet these challenges. Moscow has spent a record $160 billion on defense this year, indicating a huge military restocking and regeneration. Russia recognizes the critical status of its equipment stocks and the need to sustain combat effectiveness. Russia appears to have three main response options. The first is Eurasian regionalism focused. This strategy stresses internal rebuilding and regional security, allowing Russia to focus resources closer to its geopolitical influence. For military supplies and support, Russia has greatly strengthened its partnerships with key international allies. Production contracts with Belarus, military support from Iran, artillery ammunition from North Korea, and Syrian resources are part of this developing partnership. Russia relies more on outside actors to operate due to industrial and logistical constraints. Industrial mobilization, with the Russian economy fully mobilized for wartime output, is the third strategic measure. This industrial drive faces long-term sustainability, manpower shortages, and technology restrictions that limit its effectiveness and reliability. Russia's military leadership has also begun to alter its doctrines and explore policy reforms in reaction to material constraints and operational losses. The Russian notion of success has evolved, with current planning concentrating on strategic goals by 2026. Military leadership looks to be pondering major changes to address these issues. These include relying more on asymmetric warfare to offset material disadvantages, air defense systems, long-range strike capabilities to maintain operational leverage, and force structure adaptations to account for equipment shortages. Current analysis suggests 3 Russian military possibilities. Continuing degradation suggests that Russia would struggle to make territorial or operational advances if Western support for Ukraine continues through 2025. Under this scenario, resource restrictions and equipment depletion will weaken Russia's military. In the second possibility, forced adaptation, Russia may streamline its production processes and accept lower quality equipment for operational reasons. This strategy may temporarily relieve its forces, but it may reduce its effectiveness over time. The third possibility, a strategic pivot, suggests Russia may try to modernize and streamline its military. This transformation is difficult due to Russia's defense establishment's substantial cultural and organizational hurdles. The risk period between 2025 and 2026, when major production, refurbishment, and training lines meet, is particularly alarming. This was Russia's highest effort to rebuild its military while facing equipment shortages. Russian military strategists are aware of this situation and have begun accelerating production and researching alternative supply channels, according to intelligence assessments. Without major technological and economic changes, Russia may struggle to sustain its military capability after 2026. Analysis of Russia's industrial capacity shows that current output rates are unsustainable, especially considering personnel shortages, sanctions, and limited access to vital technologies. Russia's defense strategy may not last without major reforms or breakthroughs to maintain military preparedness and operational tempo. This projection shows the delicate balance Moscow must maintain as its military-industrial complex and economy strain. In our extensive analysis of global security dynamics, we've identified profound shifts in international military relationships stemming from Russia's declining military capabilities. The Russian tank shortage has triggered unprecedented responses from NATO and reshaped regional power dynamics in ways that will influence global security for decades to come. NATO has undergone its most significant transformation since the Cold War in response to Russia's actions, marking a fundamental shift in the alliance's posture. Analysis reveals that NATO members now account for 99% of all military aid provided to Ukraine, with a committed package of €800 million dedicated to non-lethal support. This transformation includes a substantial expansion of NATO's force readiness and capability. The alliance has established a comprehensive support structure that incorporates 300,000 high-readiness troops deployable within 30 days and an additional 500,000 troops prepared for mobilization within 6 months. Furthermore, NATO has staffed new training facilities with nearly 700 personnel and set a baseline defense funding level of €40 billion for the upcoming year. This shift is particularly evident in NATO's expanded presence in Eastern Europe. The alliance has deployed 4 multinational battle groups to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, comprising more than 4,500 troops. This deployment represents an unprecedented strengthening of NATO's eastern flank, aimed at deterring further aggression and reaffirming the alliance's commitment to collective defense. The changing dynamics in regional power have also revealed a significant realignment in force postures. NATO officially recognizes Russia as the most significant and direct threat to Euro-Atlantic security. The alliance has adopted a 3-tiered force readiness system, ensuring over 100,000 troops are prepared for rapid deployment within 10 days, 200,000 are available within 10 to 30 days, and more than 500,000 can be mobilized within 30 to 180 days. However, analysis shows that NATO currently faces a substantial capability gap, as Russia's ammunition production is estimated to outpace Western manufacturing by threefold. This imbalance highlights a critical need for NATO to address gaps in its defense industrial base. The implications of these developments extend into the realm of nuclear posturing, where concerning trends have emerged. Russia has increased its nuclear rhetoric while continuing to invest heavily in expanding its nuclear arsenal and developing advanced weapons systems. This escalation, combined with NATO's growing focus on nuclear deterrence, has contributed to the most volatile security environment since the end of the Cold War. Reports indicate that Russia's defense spending for the current year alone has reached $160 billion, underscoring the scale of its military ambitions. The analysis further identifies the period between 2025 and 2026 as a particularly critical risk window for European security, a time frame that NATO must prioritize in its strategic planning and rearmament efforts. Russia's evolving relationships with international partners have further complicated the global security landscape. Growing cooperation with countries such as North Korea, Iran, China, Belarus, Cuba, and Venezuela suggests a deepening network of alliances that could challenge NATO's strategic interests. This shift signals a reconfiguration of global power dynamics, with Russia leveraging these partnerships to mitigate the impact of Western sanctions and sustain its military activities. NATO's response to these challenges has created a new security paradigm across Europe. Enhanced forward deployments, elevated readiness levels, and a strengthened nuclear deterrence posture demonstrate the alliance's resolve to counter Russian aggression. Simultaneously, NATO's Article 5 security guarantee has bolstered confidence among member states, enabling them to support Ukraine while maintaining their security commitments. This assurance has reinforced a robust collective defense framework that ensures the alliance's credibility in the face of mounting threats. Analysis of Russia's nuclear infrastructure also reveals additional concerns. Reports suggest that Russia's nuclear weapons storage facilities have been pushed to their limits, operating at 135 to 220% of their nominal capacity. This raises significant safety and security questions, further complicating the nuclear stability equation. As the global security environment continues to evolve, NATO's response to Russia's actions has fundamentally reshaped the strategic landscape in Europe. The combination of enhanced readiness, expanded cooperation networks, and renewed focus on deterrence has altered the security calculus for the region, establishing a stronger and more coordinated defense posture among allies. A comprehensive investigation reveals that Russia is grappling with an unprecedented military equipment crisis, one that is poised to reshape global security dynamics. Detailed analysis, including satellite imagery, production data, and military intelligence, confirms that Russia's weapons storage facilities are depleting at an alarming rate, with critical exhaustion anticipated by late 2025. Efforts to mitigate these shortages through increased domestic production have proven largely ineffective. Russia's manufacturing capabilities remain severely constrained by the impact of Western sanctions, limiting production to just 30 new tanks annually while the country continues to lose approximately 100 tanks each month. These significant losses have forced the Russian military to rely increasingly on outdated Soviet-era equipment and to seek support through international partnerships with nations such as North Korea and Iran. The economic strain of sustaining prolonged military operations has also reached critical levels, consuming 41% of Russia's state budget and placing immense pressure on its already struggling industrial sector. This fiscal burden has amplified the broader consequences of the conflict, further destabilizing Russia's economic foundation. In response to these developments, NATO has taken decisive action to reinforce its defensive capabilities. The alliance has established an extensive framework of support, including the deployment of 300,000 high-readiness troops to ensure preparedness and deterrence. This shift marks a significant recalibration of NATO's military posture, strengthening its ability to respond effectively to emerging threats. Looking forward, projections indicate that the period between 2025 and 2026 will be decisive. As Russia's reserves of military equipment approach critical exhaustion across multiple categories, the balance of power in the European theater is likely to shift. This timeline aligns with NATO's enhanced readiness measures, signaling a fundamental change in the military dynamics of the region. Russia's capacity to maintain its status as a global military power is now facing unprecedented challenges, marking what could be a historic transformation in the landscape of international security. Do you think Russia can handle the challenges it faces, and will it give up its fight or go all out to win against Ukraine regardless of the consequences? Don't forget to share your opinions on Russia and Ukraine in the comments. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and see you again.